Good evening. It is now 6:01, and welcome to the Community Development Committee meeting. I am the Chair, Louis Washington. Today's meeting is being recorded and will be available on the city's website. Thank you for joining us today. Okay, we'll start with the roll call. Looks like we have Councilmember Watton.
Here.
Councilmember Washington's here. Councilmember Johnson. City Clerk Dina is here. Dina Dean, and City Administrator's here, along with
Robert.
last name.
Thrall.
Mr. Thrall. Okay. And
The city attorney's online.
City attorney is online. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, City Administrator. And we do have our Director Davis here, along with our Finance Director. Okay. Okay. Now we move to our first item of regular business, which is to approve the agenda.
So move. Second.
Okay. I will raise one issue with the agenda that, let's see. So before we dive into the affordable housing funding presentation, actually, you know what? I think this will go between. I'll get some help here from the other council members, but I think I'd like to have this go between the affordable housing funding presentation and affordable housing discussion. We would like to have a conversation on the subcommittee, the workforce affordable housing subcommittee, and council members and staff responsibilities. What do you think about having that discussion between the two?
Second.
Okay. If that'll work, we'll do that. Okay. The next thing on our agenda is, at this time, we will provide time for residents to provide public comment. I don't believe we're not offering that online yet, but I don't see anyone here in City Hall. So we'll close that piece of it. Okay, we now move to our next agenda item, which is approval of the minutes dated September 2nd, 2025. Any questions on the minutes? We're good? Okay. We accept the approval of those minutes. Okay. And at this time, we'll move to our first discussion item, which is the affordable housing funding presentation. And I want to turn the meeting over to the Director of Finance.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, Council. Just 1 second as I set up here. All right, so I believe everyone can see my screen clearly. Thank you for allowing me to present tonight. We're going to discuss our affordable housing options when it comes funding options in total. We're going to discuss what's been implemented, how much have we collected, and how we can use those funds on eligible uses overall. And so with that said, I would like to start with our first slide here, which is to just describe the local options available to address affordable housing. So far, the city of Snoqualmie has implemented about 4 of these options. These are options largely constructed by the Puget Sound Regional PSRC, for the most part, providing us with guidance in terms of what cities could potentially do out there to implement or come up with local option tools to address affordable housing funding gaps. And as I've stated, we've implemented 4 of these. So we've implemented the affordable housing sales tax credit that was only available to jurisdictions through July of 2020. We've implemented the housing related services sales tax. We've implemented an impact fee waivers for affordable housing projects specific to school impact fees. And in addition to that, we also have a multifamily tax exemption with affordable housing requirement as well that council has passed most recently in 2023. A lot of these were approved earlier this decade for the most part, except for the impact fee waiver that was approved in 1998, as well as the multifamily tax exemption, which was approved in 2023. There are other options that are available to us as well, such as coming up with an affordable housing property tax levy, but we don't currently have plans for a ballot measure. We can also utilize lodging tax to repay general obligation or revenue bonds. But there hasn't really been a plan implemented to redirect critical lodging tax revenue from annual allocations to organizations important to the city's tourism economy. In addition, we could use REIT 2 funds basically as well to support affordable housing, but currently right now there's no plan to redirect critical REIT revenue from capital programs designed to preserve and replace current capital assets. There's a mental illness and drug dependency tax that is not applicable to the city of Snoqualmie. We could also issue application fee waivers or other benefits for affordable housing projects, but the city currently does not have an application fee. We could also donate surplus public lands for affordable housing projects, but we haven't quite considered that. And last but not least, we can use our unrestricted general fund tax revenue to support affordable housing, but as we all know, we're still dealing with the 1% property tax cap, and so that may not necessarily be the wisest use of those resources to redirect it from critical police, fire, parks maintenance, street maintenance services that we provide overall. So those are the options that are available to us, and so far the city of Snoqualmie has implemented 4. As a result of at least 2 of those options with the Puget Western settlement that I'll get to in just a little bit, we have collected $1.96 million so far inside of our Affordable Housing Fund. This has been collected for the past 5 years or so at this point. You can see that we've got a considerable sum there to use towards our affordable housing incentives and so on. And with that said, I'd like to get into at least the first amount that we started to collect, which was the Puget Western Incorporated settlement. In terms of the history of this settlement, it was approved in October the 9th of 2018. Puget Western Incorporated, or PWI, was the developer of a project known as the Falls Crossing Mixed Use Final Plan that was approved in March 12 of 2001. Conditions included in that mixed use final plan required PWI to develop at least 15% of any residential dwelling units constructed as part of the project as affordable housing. Affordable housing at that time was defined as less than 80% of the median income of King County as a whole. PWI obtained a short plat approval for Kimball Creek Village. So if you're wondering where that is the kind of local shopping center off of Parkway before you start heading up to Center Boulevard. With that said, PWI subsequently conveyed several lots to another private developer who built no affordable housing. So a question arose, even if you've conveyed it, isn't there still a legal obligation to build out affordable housing? Through a settlement with the city to resolve this issue, the city and PWI settled for $255,000, releasing PWI from all claims. As a result of that, since that time period in which the settlement was issued, we've been collecting interest off that. And so currently right now, we've got somewhere north of $280,000 of funds basically from that settlement sitting inside the Affordable Housing Fund. The next revenue source that added to the Affordable Housing Fund was the Affordable Housing Sales Tax Credit that came through House Bill 1406. Before the county implemented that tax, the city of Snoqualmie kind of got in there, got that tax approved, which basically requires the state to hand over or credit us about 0.73% of the sales tax that they collect back to the city. Doesn't generate necessarily that much, so it generates approximately $2,000 monthly or $24,000 per year, but any amount counts for the most part, and so we're thankful for that state law. Ordinance 1232 was approved on April the 27th, 2020. It's located in Chapter 3.03 of the Snoqualmie Municipal Code. As I mentioned, there's a credit of 0.73% against the 6.5% state sales tax and expires after 20 years. The city may use the revenue collected by the tax imposed or bonds issued for the following purpose, largely to acquire, rehabilitate, or construct affordable housing. Now, that may include new units, affordable housing within existing structure, or facilities providing supportive housing services under RCW 7124.385. But in essence, acquiring, rehabilitating, or constructing affordable housing is its primary purpose. In addition, it could also support the providing of operations. Yes.
Just a quick question, Director. So can you go back to the?
Yeah.
last slide. I think you answered. That's okay. I'm sorry. Go back to the other. I think you answered. It's 60% now is what they defined for affordable housing.
Yes.
60% AMI.
So that,
So it's not the 80% anymore.
correct.
Okay.
So the PWI was instructed to build affordable housing, or at least 15% of those units, including an AMI under 80%. They failed in that obligation. So as a result, the city settled with PWI. So we've collected 255 that has been generating interest. I'd have to ask legal if we still have an obligation to utilize that 255 or plus thousand funds, for example, for an AMI under 80% or less.
Sure.
But, you know, that's to be answered, I think, in the future
Okay.
by legal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
In terms of this affordable housing sales tax credit, which is roughly equal to $110,000 that we've collected so far, the housing and services provided may only be provided to persons whose income is at or below 60% of the median income of the city at the time of certification or recertification. And administrative costs may not exceed 6% of the annual tax distributed to the city. So in essence, we're using 60% of the AMI of the city, which will differ from the larger tax revenue source that we've collected so far inside of the Affordable Housing Fund, which is the housing and related services sales tax, the 0.1% sales tax. So far, we've collected about $1.57 million of this revenue. The sales tax generates approximately $27,000 per month, or $322,000 per year. That includes both ongoing and non-ongoing kind of sources of revenue, added up to that $322,000 amount. The tax was approved through Resolution 1557 on October the 5th, 2020. It's a councilmanic tax. The city must use at least 60% of the revenues collected by the tax imposed or bonds issued for the following purpose: constructing or acquiring affordable housing, which could include emergency, transitional, and supportive housing and new units of affordable housing within existing structure, and facilities providing housing-related services or acquiring land for these purposes. And I think that's a really key distinction to draw out, is we can use this to purchase land. In addition, these funds can be used to construct or acquire behavioral health-related facilities or acquire land for those purposes. It could also be used to fund the operations and maintenance costs of new units of affordable housing and facilities where housing-related programs are provided, or newly constructed evaluation and treatment centers. As you can see, as I'm kind of describing this, that there's a lot of wiggle room, I think, for behavioral health-related facilities as well as treatment centers too. So part of that. And because we can use up to 60% of the revenues collected for those purposes, the remainder, if we happen to only use 60%, then the 40% must be used for the operation, delivery, or evaluation of behavioral health treatment programs and services or housing-related services. So you can use the amount in totality for constructing and acquiring affordable housing, but if you use anything, you can only use up to 40% for something else, and that something else has to be behavioral health treatment programs and services or housing-related services. The affordable housing and facilities provided, housing-related programs may only be provided to persons within the following population groups, whose income is at or below 60% of the county median income. So it's an important distinction to make with the previous sales tax credit. And those population groups are persons with behavioral health disabilities, veterans, senior citizens, persons who are homeless or at risk of being homeless, including families with children, unaccompanied homeless youth or young adults, persons with disabilities, domestic violence survivors. And in addition to that, those are the groups in which we can use those funds for. So that kind of describes the housing and related sales tax, services sales tax in a nutshell. We've got to use it for those population groups at or below that 60% AMI threshold, county median income in total. There's another kind of revenue source that I'd like to just go through briefly that had some changes recently in the state legislature this past session overall, and that's the real estate excise tax. The city may use up to $100,000 or 25% of its available funds, whichever is greater, for affordable housing projects, including those that are supported through an interlocal housing collaboration as established under Chapter 39.34 RCW. Could also be used for the planning, acquisition, construction, reconstruction, repair, replacement, rehabilitation, or improvement of facilities for those experiencing homelessness. To use any of these REIT 2 sources for affordable housing projects, it must list those affordable housing projects in the CIP. And it's got a document in its CIP that has the funds during the next 2 years for all REIT eligible capital projects as well. So some kind of restrictions on the available use of those sources, but it is a bit more freed up than it was previously, which kind of set a sunset date on our ability to use these funds for affordable housing purposes to the end of 2025. So they've made that a permanent eligible use by the changes that they made in the state legislature. In addition to that, they removed the $1 million cap as well for how much you can use of your REIT funds for affordable housing, which means now we may use up to $100,000 or 25% of its available funds, whichever is greater, which means the 25% would be applicable to Snoqualmie in this instance. So with that said, REIT funds are also potentially available revenue source, but we would likely co-determine with council how to use those resources when we go through the CIP process starting next year. And that's the end of my presentation.
Any questions for the director? Councilmember Johnson?
Yeah, thank you. I think that, closer again, I think it is notable that we can't use these funds for just any affordable housing project that either the council prioritizes or the city more broadly, that there are a number of restrictions on what especially the last bucket can go toward. So I think that's important to keep in mind.
Councilmember Juan?
The other thing too is, Drew, you brought up that there's $255,000 available for under 60%, I believe it was.
So the $255,000 that we collected from the PWI settlement.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, I'd like to probably seek legal's opinion on whether those funds could be used more broadly than just a percentage, if they can go up to 80% or even greater than that, if necessary. So I think we've had some conversations about workforce housing, but given the fact that our larger bucket is the $1.57 million, which has that set of restrictions that Councilmember Johnson mentioned overall, we may want to use also the affordable housing sales tax credit funding as well as the PWI settlement funds to augment that. I think overall, if we're trying to tackle that problem, but in essence, I think there's more of an unrestricted use for those PWI settlement funds than the other two.
And a couple follow-ups to that. First of all, just so that we can see the broader brushstroke, if we took that 1.57 and our recurring income from sales tax going forward, if we were to bond it, how much would be just kind of a ballpark figure to totally utilize that to the fullest extent?
So you're asking for a bond of it's roughly 5 to 7.
Okay.
Okay.
And then the next question too, and that is, can you blend certain AMI? So, you know, the target may be 60%, but if we blend it with others and hit that 60%, knowing that this amount of money is not going to cover a full-blown development. The average cost, as I've talked to many people that are developers, is anywhere from $350,000 to $650,000 per door, and that's nonprofits. So if you're thinking about 30 units, you're really talking about 10+ million in development, plus development costs, because there's some uniqueness to this piece of property, one of the pieces of property that we're discussing.
Yeah, I think these developments might be blended in terms of the incomes that are available. You may have some market units, and as well as including some of these affordable housing units overall. My assumption currently right now, it's my working assumption overall, is these funds would be used to support just the proportion of the project that is associated with the affordable housing unit and nothing more. Not the market units or anything like that, which keep us, you know, within the boundaries of the law overall. In essence, it would help us to deed restrict potentially the property so that we can make sure that those units remain affordable for a long period of time and so on. So that's my perception. I'd have to probably ask for a legal opinion on that necessarily, just given the way the law's written overall. But I think it's probably how most cities are interpreting how to potentially use those funds.
Thank you.
Thank you, Drew. City Administrator Chambliss?
Drew is very good. I was going to recommend that that question actually go to the city attorney when the city attorney has time to prepare an answer for it, rather than ask the finance director. Nuances of, the way the affordable housing law goes. So, good job, Drew.
So I'll ask a quick question. Can we go back to the list for the 1.57 million, the
Yeah.
restricted list? I think, there we go. So, and just looking at this list, again, probably another legal question. So let's say that we considered something like senior citizen housing. Can we have a certain portion of it dedicated to senior citizen, but other parts of it for other segments of the population that we're trying to house?
I would say anyone within this group.
Mhm.
So if we're looking at just these specific affordable housing units as a part of a larger project overall, it would have to serve this these populations in total,
In total, okay.
right?
Okay.
So you had 5 units for veterans, 5 units for senior citizens, for example. All that would be, we can use these funds
Right.
for the 10 units in total. I don't think it's, yeah.
Okay, thank
Mhm.
you. Councilmember Johnson?
You may have already defined this and I just missed it, but let me just make sure it's not actually in there. Okay, in terms of persons who are homeless or at risk of being homeless, is that captured in the 60% of the county median income? Or can we just decide as a city, oh, well, it's possible that someone who makes $1 million a year could lose their job, could find themselves homeless, therefore they are at risk? Like, how is like at risk effectively kind of defined?
So.
Or is it?
I'm
It's-
gonna
Or is that
suggest-
illegal again?
Suggesting that one go to legal too,
But
and they have time to
I'll also
prepare
say
it.
that after reading the law, I don't think these categories aren't that well defined, right, necessarily within the RCW. So we may be looking for a whack in the future, but I'll defer to legal.
The attorney does have her hand raised.
Thank you, City Administrator. We do have the city attorney. Go ahead, please, City Attorney Burke.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, loud and clear.
Yeah, so these are really good questions that I would want to research before definitively answering, but I would say, um, I mean, I know the cost of housing and everything in, Snoqualmie is really expensive, but I think that, saying a person who makes $1 million a year could be at risk of being homeless, I think the optics of that in term would not go over well, so I would not recommend doing that, even if that could be argued to be a gray area of the law. And so I'm happy, I'm writing down these questions and I'd be happy to research them further and provide an answer.
Thank you. I have a follow-up from Councilmember Johnson.
Yeah, just to be clear, of course, I'm not suggesting that. Just trying to figure out like what the actual guardrails are.
Yeah. Councilmember One?
I think it's probably helpful that it's most likely under 30% AMI, which is defined as very low income, would be those that are in that category. So just for clarification.
Okay. Any other questions for the director? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director.
Thank you.
Thank you. So this time I'm going to turn the meeting over to Director Davis.
Thank you, Chair Washington. Good evening, Council Committee. Sorry. Okay, so I put in a list of questions
Oh,
that,
Oh, yeah,
Good.
we wanted to have essentially number 3 now and then before number 4. So that was the question, the conversation regarding the workforce housing / affordable housing subcommittee and council members and staff responsibilities.
Sure.
So-
Director Davis didn't prepare anything, so maybe you could lead the conversation and we could fill in the
Absolutely.
blanks.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I can definitely lead that part of the conversation. So I guess we can just kind of kick that piece off. So I know there were ongoing questions around the inception of the workforce housing, affordable housing task force. And so I'll just, from my standpoint, kind of clear some of that up. So uh, the sole purpose of the committee was to go in and to evaluate the 2 submittals. So we ended up, is that correct?
the
Dorothy?
subcommittee,
For the 2 submittals, right? We got 2 submittals
yes.
for the RFQ?
Yes.
Okay, so 2 submittals. So the purpose of the subcommittee was to essentially and only evaluate those submittals. So, and I'll open it up for questions here for comments. But my thought is, since we're essentially closing out the RFQ in terms of responding to the respondents, probably at this point, we can disband the subcommittee. Councilmember Johnson?
Yeah, and I think that we have the Community Development Committee here that can continue that work of affordable housing. So disbanding that committee doesn't mean disbanding work on the affordable housing issue. It's just simply that the work of that subcommittee has concluded since we already took action with regard to closing out the RFQ. So this would kind of formalize that process. And I think we need to have a separate conversation about so what is that future work? Part of it is, I believe, what Director Davis has brought to us, which is, okay, so what do we want? I don't want to get too far down into those weeds yet, because that's what's coming up next. But just in brief, I think that the main reason that, if I remember correctly, the main reason that we went with an RFQ as opposed to an RFP was that those questions that are coming to us kind of needed to be answered. And so my main point, back around to why I'm saying all this now, is that I think that the work of the subcommittee to review that RFQ has concluded, and there's still tons and tons of work that we can do as members of this committee with our staff as appropriate, and just as individual council members who know people in the community, et cetera, can do.
Yeah. And please correct if I'm wrong, City Administrator Chambliss, but I think another part of that conversation why we elected to go with the RFQ as opposed to the RFP was staff time. That the RFP would have created some pretty significant challenges and costs to the city. And so the RFQ was this, we landed on the RFQ as another part of that reason.
Time was a factor, and that is because we didn't preload. We got to the decision point before we did the work to get to the decision point.
Mhm.
So
Just this.
we are about to start that work,
Okay.
which is not going to be wrapped up at this meeting.
These are good questions.
Aw.
There's going to be multiple meetings to get to the point where we can have a much clearer path, and Mona's dialed in and we're ready to go, and we're rolling up our sleeves.
Yeah.
It was a time of transition
Mhm.
when that all happened.
Absolutely.
And we all learned a lot through the process. So,
Absolutely.
Absolutely, absolutely. And just to kind of level set there, I'll just, City Administrator and I have had a conversation. Yeah, this won't be a one and done tonight. Maybe 2, 3 committee meetings before we actually bubble this up to council. Did you want to
Yeah,
make a comment?
I think, we learned something from this process. One is if we want to hire somebody that will do the work for us, an RFQ is appropriate,
Mhm.
where they've helped other communities help kind of define what it is. But what we ended up with was something that was very vague, and we had a difficult time having responses. And especially it was following a model that we've kind of worked together, and keep in mind that the Housing Task Force has no formal um, body, governmental body. We don't vote on things. We just simply talk and share. And we did the same thing. We went out to Daily Journal of Commerce, posted what we had, and got responses back. Not as many as our sister city did. They got, I think, a number of responses back. So I think that, plus we were hoping that we could drive some of whatever was left over from North Bend or what they learned, glean it so that we could use that to help do our outreach. And some of that was done. And we still didn't get the traction that we were hoping. And the ultimate was, we had two organizations, one national, never being here. It wasn't size and scale and of what we talked about on the council. And the other one gave us a lot of different partners they could bring together, but as a group, they never actually consummated a housing project like this one that we're proposing. So just for clarification, and I think this gives us a great springboard for putting those ideas together now.
Okay. Councilmember Johnson?
Yeah, and just to clarify, and I'm sure that this is just like a nuance inside baseball, but that we're talking about something other than the Affordable Housing Task Force. It was a valley-wide effort and stuff. The Workforce
Subcommittee,
Housing
yeah.
Subcommittee
Yeah.
was a separate entity from
Right,
that.
right.
Yeah.
So we're
Just
specifically
clarifying for anyone
Yeah.
watching. at home.
watching, yeah, we're specifically talking about the subcommittee that
Right.
came from this committee to evaluate the two submittals in the RFQ, disbanding that piece. But I do want to make clear that council members are free. Just a second, Councilman
Yeah,
Johnson, get right to you.
I think you're getting to where I'm
Yeah,
going. Yeah.
council members are free to have discussions at large in the community with partners. Absolutely. We want to see ideas and hear about great ideas coming in. Councilman Johnson.
So then this gets to kind of another question that maybe we need legal to weigh in on to some degree. Not to put you on the spot to have an answer tonight, of course, to our city attorney and staff. But in terms of, what is appropriate engagement for city council members with the public? If we find someone or a developer who's interested in a project and we bring them in, then does that in any way create a perception of a conflict of interest? I really don't know these things, and before I go and step in something, I would like to know. Or maybe that doesn't count as a conflict of interest because you're not invested in them, just in the concept, and you happen to find someone who was interested. Yeah, so those are all just things that I'm wondering about that I think was part of what we wanted to have this discussion. But the second part of your original motion, Chair, for what to talk about here in this segment of our agenda is kind of what are the council and staff responsibilities and what we can do and what we ought to not do. Just one other example of an ought not do is like directing staff, because that is an administration task. And we are not, as council members of the administration. So I could request things to staff, but I can't direct staff to do something, is my understanding.
Yeah. Did you maybe want to weigh in that, weigh in on that, City Attorney Burke, or at a later time, maybe give us some thought?
So some initial thoughts. I mean, there's nothing immediately wrong with if you, I don't know, you're out and about and you meet a developer and you're like, hey, at some point in the future, we might have an RFQ or RFP, encourage you to apply. A lot of times you'll hear of what's called like the cone of silence. So once we have an RFP or an RFQ out, the communication with people who are potential applicants or applicants is very limited. Right now, we don't have an RFP or RFQ out. So I think if you're just out and about and talk to an organization, I think general comments of, we're looking to do this. Looks like your organization company does something like this, you know, hope you will apply when we have this posted.
Councilmember Johnson?
And then I think this is an obvious question, hopefully, but my assumption is I can't find a developer in the community and say, "Oh, just apply. Don't worry, we'll give it to you."
Please don't do that. Please don't. Yeah, no promises. It's just,
Exactly.
yeah,
Just
no
that you- it's
promises.
informative. We're considering
Yeah.
issuing an RFP. You'd be welcome to respond.
Yeah, just trying to get the word out for to all potential applicants that there might be something in the future, and you're not making any promises that they would get it. And I would also caution against giving like insider tips of like what the city may want or may not want. I would just keep it very, very general.
Okay.
Or
Come.
stick to the RFP, perhaps.
Yeah, just say, hey, it'll be posted on the website. Please check it out. Sign up for our newsletter so you can get notified of it.
Yeah, that would probably be best practice, right?
Yes.
City attorney.
Yes.
Refer them to the website for the RFP.
Yes.
Councilmember Wadd?
Until we land on an RFP, is it inappropriate to seek information from those that have done similar projects in the past so that we are better informed?
Um, I think if you're keeping it to like, um, I noticed, you know, XYZ city did this. How did it go? I think that would be fine. Or if you're asking a developer, you know, how did your project, you know, whatever project they did in another city and how did it go? I don't see off the bat anything immediately unethical potentially about that.
But just to be clear, City Attorney Burt, if we got into a discussion that says, okay, well, we're looking for this, how would you approach XYZ? That steps over the line.
I would caution about going that far. I think if you just asked a generic question of, hey, I saw this project, how'd it go? That's very open. When you start talking about the specifics that we may or may not be looking for, then you're kind of getting into, you know, somebody could think they're being promised something that they're not.
Okay.
And then also once we're in, have an RFP or RFQ posted. That's the cone of silence, and I would not even engage in any conversations with people who could be potentially applying. And you could just, I'm happy to take the hit on that, and you can say that your city attorney told you not to do that because even just hey, how about those mariners? You know, if it gets too involved, it could
Yeah.
give the appearance of something potentially that may or may not be there. So even if it's not unethical, sometimes just the optics of it can and make people wary.
Thank you, City Attorney. Councilmember Johnson?
Yeah, and I feel like I remember from my trainings that it isn't necessarily the actual act of favoritism that's the problem. It's just the appearance of it crosses the line.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So I just wanted to make sure that I understood what I thought I heard city attorney saying was the prior to the FRQ or FRP, whatever it is being issued.
RFP.
In this case, I guess we're talking RFP, giving specifics about what we're looking for when it hadn't been issued yet could still be viewed as some form of kind of giving insider information.
Yeah.
But after the RFQ is released, then it becomes an extra no-no because now we're actually involved in the process itself. So it's kind of from both ends that we can't get into specifics when talking to potential developers.
Right.
But for different reasons on either end of the issuance of the RF.
Right. I would not want to have any appearance that a developer one developer got insider tips and another developer did not get those insider tips. So I would keep it, that's the purpose of the RFP or RFQ is to kind of where we lay out what we're looking for. Um, and so that document should cover all of that. And I think if you're telling developers side conversations of what we're looking for, that could be interpreted as giving an insider tip to a developer. So I would hesitate to do that.
Thank you. The-
Uh,
Hang on one second. Did you have a comment or question? Okay, Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you. Yeah, this is exactly why I want to have this conversation. I feel like I've learned a lot. There was one other thing I just wanted to get into, and that's if my understanding is right, and if there are nuances that we should talk about with regard to staff and council interactions. Yeah.
City Administrator Chambliss.
So council makes policy and the administration enacts council's policy. So usually depends on the head of the administration on access. The mayor is comfortable with you contacting department heads directly. Ask that you keep us in the loop, but I wouldn't recommend going any lower than that.
Any
without-
lower than department head.
Yeah.
Right.
You may freak somebody out,
Right.
quite frankly.
That's official. Okay. Any questions, Councilmember One?
I'm good.
Comments?
I'm good.
Okay, well, we're gonna turn over that brings us to our next agenda item, which is the affordable housing discussion. And our Director Davis is gonna lead that conversation.
Okay, thank you. So I think, going through the RFQ process and sitting down to kind of try to figure out how to evaluate led us to so many more questions that we realized we needed answers to in order to effectively go out for an RFP. So the city administrator and I sat down, put our heads together, came up with some questions that we've put in your packet tonight that I think are going to be really important for us to talk about and have a better understanding of what this project is going to look like and be able to relay that in a future RFP so that we can get viable applicants coming in that know exactly what the expectation is. And I think it will give us much better results to review and analyze at a later time. So,
Okay.
I guess as we kind of brainstormed and went through the RFQs and realized how much more information was needed in order to know how to proceed. We can go through these questions one at a time. I can kind of run through them and give you a little analysis of why we came up with them. What would you prefer?
Well, I'll just kind of start just kind of with my opinion on it. So just a few questions first, Director. So is the idea that we go through these 14 questions here as a committee over some, various meeting times and kind of come up with a unified front and then bubble this information up to the council and have a similar conversation with the general counsel?
I think that would be preferable, yes.
Okay,
So
okay,
everybody's on the same page.
okay. City Administrator?
But I expect these 16 questions to lead to 50 more.
Absolutely. That's the process of philosophy.
Yeah.
Socratic method.
So we're not going to limit ourselves to 16.
To 16.
This is a start.
Very, very good, very good.
I think we have to be thinking of when we go out for an RFP, we have to lay this project out very well and very thoroughly so that we don't have the developers coming back and asking us all these questions that we really don't know the answer to.
Mhm,
Do you have what utilities are available to the site?
mhm.
What's the city's contribution in this? I mean, we'll go through all the questions, but the RFQ process did uncover a lot of missing links that I think we need to work on before we proceed. So, um,
And then, sorry, I just had
Oh,
a
no, go ahead.
quick follow-up. So we know that there's a piece of property that we were looking at before with the subcommittee, and, you know, it's a good piece of land. I mean, you know, it comes with its challenges, but the city's always looking for, you know, other plots of land to potentially do something for work housing / affordable housing. So when we answer these questions, I mean, are we tying it specifically to that property, or we want to keep it pretty general? Councilmember, City Administrator Chambliss? Just promoted you.
Uh, So I think we can handle the specifics part
Okay,
for whatever we decide to do.
okay,
It's more the bigger questions
Okay.
such as how much money do we want to commit? You know, what exactly are we targeting? That's where we need the help.
okay.
We can handle whether or not there's a sewer line on our property or what the elevations are, or all that stuff.
Okay, so more of the strategic piece of it is what
Correct.
you're looking for. Okay. Councilmember Watton.
So what you're proposing here is really a framework, regardless of which property it might be, that we can utilize over and over again. These are the questions that we have to, you know, land on and figure out what kind of, you know, the parameters are, the margins that we're willing to go to or not include.
Yes, I mean, we need to answer these fundamental questions, whether it be on any property that we have up that we want to go out for an RFQ to find developers. You know, we need to know how much money the city's willing to contribute. Is this a development the city wants to keep in ownership? Do we want to, how do we want to, do we want to sell this property to a developer? Do we want to lease it to them? You know, what's the city's role in this kind of a development? So I think that's why it will be important to kind of go through here, and then, you know, we can apply it to this first piece of property. We could apply it to another piece of property. It's just these fundamental questions of what role does the city want to play in building affordable housing, senior housing, workforce housing, and how much money is the city willing to subsidize? Commerce has made it pretty clear that they're expecting cities to subsidize, and that can look like a lot of different things. So we just need to kind of dial down to see what that looks like for us.
Makes sense, makes sense. Councilmember Johnson, did you have a comment or a question? Okay. Okay, back to you, Director.
Okay, so let's just start at the top, and you know, I'm in visualizing that this will be more of just a discussion. We can brainstorm a little bit. We don't have to have an exact answer to the question, but at least to kind of get us noodling on some of the issues that we're facing here. So what's the city's role in this development? So let's assume that we are talking about the property that's I think it's 13 acres with one developable acre off of the parkway. So like what would the city's role be in this development? How involved do we want to get? Do we want to just go out for an RFP and have a developer come in and kind of take over the project? Do we want to, in exchange for, I mean, are we selling them the property? Are we giving them the property? Like what, is it something that we want to maintain ownership of? Do we want to lease it to them? I mean, these are the kind of things we need to start talking about.
I mean, at first crack at that, Director, I would say depends, my favorite word, right?
Right.
It depends on the
What's the
business.
problem?
Well, on the business case and what closes the business case. You know, I know that Councilmember Wadden has got a breadth of experience in this, you know, and his associations, you know, with the the Affordable Housing Task Force. But being a part of that, you know, one of the things I learned on the task force were, pardon the expression, put a lot of different ways to, you know, look at that. And it just really is going to depend on the business case. And I guess the first thing I would throw out, how buildable the property is, kind of what makes financial sense. Councilmember Johnson?
Go ahead, Councilmember Watt.
Oh, did you have a question?
So I think that the centerpiece to this and whatever we do, it has to be the highest and best use for affordable workforce housing. And the topography is going to kind of dictate what audience it would be. I mean,
Mhm.
this particular one is challenging if you're a senior citizen. It's going to be challenging if you have certain limitations, mobility limitations. There are other sites that are probably more conducive.
Mhm.
So I think that we need, as a council, to kind of put our vision around it. And this is where we get to, have a little bit of creativity, if there is, kind of helping to paint that vision. And we can probably think of, who the ultimate tenant is going to be for this.
Mhm.
And then I think the other thing that we have to decide, and Director Davis pointed out, is it city controlled, which means liability with
Mhm.
us?
Mhm.
Is it conveyed, which means we give it to the developer, or do we do it on a 99-year
Yeah.
land lease, which gives us control, but still legal can chime in on each of those three, but I think we need to kind of conceptually figure out where we land on that issue. If we can get those two big issues, the other pieces will fall in, but we also need public works as far as flow of water and flow of other things, the aftermath. And then transportation, we know that it's a limited site for parking, so we've got to take that in consideration. And that will kind of lead to what we ultimately want to ask a developer to come in and say, okay, this is what we're looking for. And that's about it. Oh, and then the other one, wraparound services. What would that look like? And you put all those things together and we'll end up with a great soup at the end.
We're going to come right over to you, Councilmember Johnson, but I'm just going to respond. I agree with you, Councilmember Wadden. I don't like that first piece of it. I mean, I don't think the city's a good landlord. I don't like the city-owned piece of it, just kind of hearing that right off the cuff. Just in some of the other projects that say I've been involved in, but I know about that's a little dicey. The other piece around the wraparound services, again, depends on where we are in that band of AMI. I mean, typically the lower you get into that AMI, the more wraparound services that you need to provide. So, I mean, Councilmember Johnson.
Yeah, just thinking about, again, the wraparound services that could get to a point where it's a building full of services and not much housing.
That's true.
So, yeah, it's just like the question of, what's the proper scale of what's needed and what can be provided in the space. It's definitely a tough nut to crack because we want everything and we can't, and there's very little land to put things on.
Councilmember Juan.
So just as far as wraparound services, they can either be on-site or mobile and
Mhm.
available. So we've got to make sure that we clarify on that.
Okay.
It doesn't have to occupy space on the site.
Chair.
Councilmember Johnson.
Yeah, we are kind of running against the clock here. And we
Barely brushed question
we
one.
barely touched on one of them. Yeah, I think that it is true that it depends to a degree, but I wonder if we need a little bit more information on what is typical for what scale of project. What kinds of like what proportion of developments of a similar size tend to be owned by cities versus tend to be leased? Is there some general trend, and is there reason for that? And that could help us if it's helpful in an FRP to specifically say the city will retain ownership or the city will do blah, blah, blah. And then perhaps one other thought is that if we did have something to land on with an informed decision that we think that this is the best route, is there anything wrong with in the FRP saying we are also open to negotiation on that point, as it becomes relevant during the process of the RFP, whether it be awarding the contract or whatever it is. I know that was a lot of words.
Yeah.
and we've got like a minute to figure that out.
Yeah, I'll just add this, that, so when I was on the Affordable Housing Task Force, and I'll ask you this, Councilmember Watton, we had a great presentation, and I don't remember, it was a developer, but I mean, it's been a while. I can't recall the developer's name, but it was a really great presentation. And they kind of went into some of this conversation, but kind of the benefits of retaining ownership. But if it's possible, maybe, I mean, because we're not the experts here, my idea is maybe we bring in, maybe if it's not that developer or similar developer, and have a presentation.
So we've got two flavors. One would be land trusts, and
Okay.
that's what Habitat operates off of, where the land is owned by the organization,
Mhm,
or and people buy their unit. They buy their unit.
mhm.
And then the other one is just affordable rents. So we've got to think of those. So there are a lot of different people we could bring in, but I think that to your point is the more information we have and that we can put
Yeah.
together, it'll make us more informed.
Already got questions.
Yeah. Director Davis.
If I could just say, like, this has been an ongoing thing where I have been researching this. I have
Okay.
been reaching out to other jurisdictions to kind of get a feel for what everybody else is doing or trying to do. And there's a lot of confusion out there. Like, a lot of cities are really grappling with this because the bigger cities have funding to subsidize housing. They're leaning more towards, purchasing hotels and renovating them
Mm,
as opposed to building from scratch, like what we were
not an option.
proposing. So, and we've also, like, just in just reaching out and talking to different peers and that type of thing, they're hearing a lot of the developments that have been built by like Imagine Housing, for example. If they build one, they may say, we wouldn't build that again. It doesn't work. It's just not the right, it's too difficult to build that type of unit for example, permanent supportive housing and be able to provide the wraparound services or not being able to get the wraparound services. And so there's just all these different scenarios out there. And I think every city is grappling with this right now.
No, I think that's an excellent point. I think you make an excellent point, Councilmember Watton. I think we continue to have more of the strategic discussion, but at some point, I think it would benefit this committee from maybe having one of the developers or a couple of developers come in and give us a presentation on possibilities. Councilmember Johnson?
Yeah, one last thought is that I hear a lot of Director Davis doing a lot of things. And I have very serious concerns about the staffing levels and what we are asking of community development to do. It's a lot, and it's been a huge priority for the council now ever since I joined the council, and I believe before that as well. And I have serious concerns about the level of service that we're able to get out of that department
Yep.
with the limited staff. So I want to throw that out there.
Okay, thank you. Did you have anything to add, Councilmember Watton?
Our tax dollars get very well deployed here.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Director
Thank
Davis.
you.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
With that said, there being no further business to come before this committee, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we are adjourned at 6:59.